Hi, everybody. Welcome along to episode 44 of Percussion Discussion. Hope you're all enjoying these interviews that we're doing for you. You can check out our social media if you so wish. We are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, and of course, Twitter. And don't forget our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. This way you won't miss any of the upcoming interviews that we've got. And there's a lot of those. And of course, the great interviews that we've already done. Great news is if you want to listen on the go, all our conversations are available in podcast form on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so you can check those out too. On to today's guest, a guy who has played pretty much for some of the biggest bands on earth. He comes from a ridiculously musical and incredibly talented family. He's graced the drum chair for Infectious Grooves, Suicidal Tendencies, Bad Religion. The list goes on and on and on. Tenacious D. And since 2016, he's held the drum stool with Avenged Sevenfold. It gives me incredible pleasure to welcome the fantastic Mr. Brooks Wackerman.
My pleasure. And thank you for asking me to be a part of this. I'm a fan of what you're doing, and I was more than happy to say yes. So well, it's great to be here.
It's very kind of you. And before we go any further, I have to say thank you to our mutual friend, UK fantastic drummer, Mr. Steve Barney, for hooking this up. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Absolutely. Now, you guys met quite a long time ago. We were just talking off there. It was, how many years did you say it was, Brooks, when you met Steve?
Let's go with 1997.
Right.
So I was fresh out of high school when I met Steve Barney. We did a German festival tour for maybe 3 weeks, and I was playing with Suicidal Tendencies, and Steve was playing with a band called Bully Rag.
Yeah.
And he was just one of the guys that I hung out with on a daily basis, because we would pull up to the venue way too goddamn early, and we were just, I think, geek out on drumming and gear and philosophies on drumming. So he was a guy that I connected with on that tour. There was like 5 or 6 bands, but after seeing him play, he was definitely one of the good ones. So it was great to know him. And decades later, he reaches out to me and says, "Would you like to be on this interview show?" Yes, I would.
Here we are, and I appreciate it. Well, look, obviously we're in very strange times at the moment, in the middle of a pandemic. For people in the arts, it's not the best of times. Hopefully we're getting towards the end of it now. Have you been up to anything exciting? Have you managed to keep playing at all, Brooks?
I've been productive as one can be, sans touring, since our industry has pretty much shut down. But yeah, I mean, you could go down 2 very different paths. You could, not be productive and stomp your feet and be pissed off about the climate right now, or you can call people up, be creative, write, read books. So I took the latter road, and a couple projects I've been involved with. The first one being my first master class that you can find on my merch page, 1234clothing.com. And my dad has been an educator for over 50 years. So I've always admired my father, obviously, and he's the reason why I do music. And he was the guy that would drive me up to Los Angeles for private lessons with Murray Spivak and Chuck Floyce. So I always wanted to do something occasionally. And as soon as my industry shut down, here's that opportunity to set up a couple GoPros in my studio. And man, it was hard work. It was not fun the majority of the time, because I would do these segments and then look at the dailies, not to sound like a pretentious asshole, but I will. And I just like, why am I saying why am I saying that so much? You know, you just kind of put yourself under a microscope. But so once I got over that hump and hurdle, I started to relax and just go, okay, it's not going to be perfect. What's important is to convey what I learned growing up, and share that with my audience or whoever is interested. And yeah, I got it done. So I have 2 hours worth of content that I've released, and I cover everything from groove playing, how to play with space, a double kick segment, song breakdowns, and coordination exercises that I still practice. So that was my first feat for COVID, and then I finished the new Avenged Sevenfold record last summer.
Yeah.
So we're about 70% done with it. Yeah, so, and that record we started writing, I think like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
After our last show in Europe. So that's been a fun ride. And yeah, between those 2 projects, I've been pretty busy, and I'm a dad too. So that's really my full-time gig.
Yeah, same here. It's trying to squeeze these in is always a little bit of a tricky thing between bedtime and what have you, you know. But did you're talking about the stuff that you've produced, educational stuff, if you like. Have you edited it yourself, or have you had help with that?
No, I wasn't that ambitious. Trying to operate the GoPros and Pro Tools simultaneously was enough for me.
Yeah.
Plus, trying to be an educator, that was plenty to take on. I probably would have had a heart attack trying to figure out editing. So I had an amazing editing team that I hired for that. And yeah, I realized the beauty of editing after seeing what these artists do. I definitely consider them artists. But yeah, no, it's been a journey, to say the least.
That's pretty productive, though, isn't it? When you think about it, you've not just sat and watched Netflix for 12 months.
Well, I've watched a lot of Netflix. I'm not going to lie to you. I definitely caught up on my shows, but yeah, I know TV's so good these days. It's hard to not watch Netflix. But yeah, I'm always into taking on something new, something innovative. The year prior to that, I filmed a short. I got into script writing, so I wrote this kind of SNL comedy skit, but it's a short, so it clocked in at like 25 minutes. So that was my acting debut. You can go on my YouTube page. I hope I don't sound like a plug whore here. Go to my YouTube page and check out my work. But if you're interested in a drummer acting, you definitely want to go to my YouTube page. So I kind of weave in the masterclass in that category with trying something new, getting out of my comfort zone, and and even with Avenged, like every record that we try and push the envelope and try new sounds, try new rhythms, try odd times, so like that's another reason why I love playing in this band, is because we're not regurgitating the same record that we did 4 years ago.
That's really evident. It's a band that evolves. It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been in a band where every guy listens to classical to hip hop to death metal. I mean, that's how I was raised. I was raised listening to Frank Zappa and Prince and Van Halen and Buddy Rich and Tony Williams, Miles Davis. So, you know, to have this schizophrenic taster's choice that I stepped into was perfect. So yeah, I definitely don't take that for granted.
I mean, because we're kind of jumping about a little bit, but the gigs you have, nothing is particularly straightforward in the way, you know, musically, that the bands that you're in, then nothing is straightforward. Perhaps the most straightforward, I don't know, is it maybe Bad Religion? I don't know, as in Lack of Odd Times and things.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, with Bad Religion, they established such a sound that we really didn't have to divert into, you know, progressive rock. Even though their second record, they bought a keyboard and they tried a little progressive rock, but it didn't really work out too well. I like some of the songs though. But yeah, it's definitely formulaic in the sense that, you know, it's going to be a Bad Religion record, and, you know, Greg the singer has this very singular sounding voice, and but yeah, certain bands it works for them. I always considered, you know, Bad Religion kind of the Rolling Stones of punk rock. You know, as far as how all the different eras that they've recorded, and, you know, so yeah.
And a prolific band. They've really, I mean, I don't know how many albums is it? How long were you with them? So long. Was it 12 or 13 years? It was a long time, wasn't it?
15 years. Yeah, I joined in 2000, and then left in 2015.
Wow. Well, I tell you what. I mean, I love the True North album. I think that's a great album. It's just such a brilliant. I just like it. I've heard a few. That's the one I kind of go back to. Hello, Cruel World, I think, is my favorite track on that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I haven't heard that in years. So, yeah, when we tracked that record, I felt like there was I don't know, a resurgence in the songwriting. I mean, we did a couple of records prior to that where, you know, I was proud of them, but when we hit True North, when we found our True North, pardon the pun, there was just something about that record where it was consistently charging, and it kind of, you know, like a rocket by the time that the last song. So, but yeah, Greg and Brett, who are the primary songwriters in Bad Religion, I thought did a really great job on that record.
Absolutely. It's a great album, full stop. But do you know, you might be surprised, the first time I actually heard you play, well, I don't, you didn't do all the tracks, was I'm a massive Judas Priest fan. The first band
Baptism of Fire is what you're talking about.
It is indeed, yeah. Back in, was it 96, 97-ish, something like that? Or was it before then even? I don't even know. I'm not sure.
I don't know. It was right. I think it was right around the time that I met Steve Barney.
Yeah.
It was like mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
Do you remember the bass player who played with me on the record?
I can't think. I know Cozy Powell played on some of the tracks as well with drums.
Robert Trujillo played bass on all the songs that I played on. Yeah.
Yes, of course he did. Yes, that was a great album.
Thank you. Yeah. I didn't even know what Baptism of Fire meant until I played on that record. Then I learned, like, Jesus, this is some hellish content here. Yeah. But Glenn Tipton was great. Could not have been a nicer guy, and obviously a great player. So, Mark Dotson produced that record.
Yeah.
He was a UK man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have fond memories of that time. Everything kind of flowed during that session.
Because I remember hearing the first sort of chords in the first song, and it was that classic Judas Priest guitar sound, and it's instantly recognizable. And I have the CD somewhere in my house or in here, and I'm desperately trying to find it, and I just couldn't find it. I've got it somewhere, probably a layer of dust on it.
Cool. Yeah, I don't. that record doesn't reference every day. So I'm glad
no, but that is definitely the first time I heard you, you know, and I just had to, you know how you do, you look through the liner notes and it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, because it was yourself, Cozy Powell, and I could be wrong, was it Shannon Larkin on a few?
Yeah, yes, yeah, who plays with Godsmack, right?
Yes, yes, I think he does. Yeah,
great drummer.
Yeah. Three great drummers there. The late Cozy Powell as well. It's.
I know. Gosh, I mean, he's the quintessential rocker, and such great feel. Yeah.
So let's go back to the kind of early days, because your house must have been kind of a fun place to grow up. Obviously, there's so much music with your brothers and your dad, and just tell us a little bit about how that was as a young lad growing up, you know, with some great musicians.
So it actually wasn't as loud as one would think, because there's a significant age gap between myself and my brother John, who's the next in line, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
And there's 13-year difference there. So all my brothers were moved out touring by the time that I was, I want to say like 8 or 9. So I essentially grew up as an only child.
yeah. That's quite an age gap, isn't it? Wow. Yeah.
It's quite an age gap. Yeah. I was what we call an oopsie baby for sure. Yeah. My dad won't deny it until the cows come home, but there's no way my parents would have, you know, took a 13-year hiatus before having me. So we can confirm this on the show. But okay, so my youngest memory of drumming is always waking up, seeing a chrome Slingerland set in the garage, because my brothers were sponsored by Slingerland. So there was always a chrome set in the garage, and then there was a set in the living room too, because my dad is a jazz band teacher. So he would have like summer band in our living room, and there would be a brown Slingerland set there. So I would just wake up and jump on one of the 2 kits and just start playing. There was always drums around, and music being played, going to shows. My brother Bob's a bassist, so I have memories of playing with him. Even though he was moved out, he would come over and we would just, you know, we'd play a bass line, and I would learn how to play with a rhythm section. And then going to see my brothers play, I went to Zappa rehearsals, and they would have me sit in, and, you know, I would walk in with like a Motley Crue shirt because that's what I was into. But then I'm like, oh, this is kind of funny sounding music. And then I got into Frank, and my brother John, who's a great drummer, started playing with Bunny Burnell and Kazumi Watanabe. So we would see him play. So it was a well-rounded buffet of music. And then I started, you know, paving my own path. I discovered, you know, punk rock and got into more aggressive music. Still studying with Murray and Chuck, and you know, having that education that I would incorporate into my own playing. So yeah, it was just a very supportive household, you know. And even if I didn't want to be a musician, my parents were always, you know, there for me, and would, you know, if you want to be a hockey player, okay, we'll take you to practice. Let's figure out how to get, you know, the puck on the ice.
I mean, it's written in the stars that you were going to go on and do this, though, isn't it? With, you know, I mean, your parents must be so incredibly proud of what you've all done. You know, you've carved.
They are, yeah. They're yeah. My my dad is still around. My mom passed in 2013, but when she was around, she loved going to shows, and they would come out to Bad Religion shows. And oh, honey, I love that song, "Fuck Armageddon." My parents are churchgoers, and there would be the crossbuster there. And that's an interesting symbol. So, but they were supportive. They have a sense of humor. They understand. They understood what we were trying to accomplish, whether it be comedically or musically or both. So yeah, they just love music. They love. My dad still goes to the NAMM show every year, and he's 90 years old.
Is he?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he goes to baked potato shows to see Chad play, and he loves music.
Incredible. I mean, it's pretty unique to have a family who go on to do such incredible things. Everyone's made a living from this, and it's pretty unique, isn't it?
It's a true anomaly that we all ended up musically active and were able to turn this into a career. And not only as drummers, but also we produce, and we all write, and my brothers are really good engineers too. So and I'm a frustrated engineer, but I'm trying to get better. And so we it's all rooted in our main instruments, but then we kind of also veered off and got into some other fields too. So I think that just makes you a better musician.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyways.
And then you got good really, really early, didn't you? I mean, I don't know whether I should bring this up or not, but the Bad for Good, you were kids, weren't you? This was kind of...
Yeah, our guitar player who still lives there, Thomas McRockland, is from Newcastle, England.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so I met him at the NAMM show in the early 90s. And he was playing at an Ibanez booth, and I had golden locks down to my ass. And so his dad came up to me and said, "Oh, you look like a musician." And I said, "Yeah, I'm a drummer." It's like, "Oh, well, we just signed a deal with Interscope Records, and Steve Vai is producing it. We're looking for a band. Would you mind auditioning?" And okay, cool. So they came down to my house, and we played Crazy Train, and the birth of Bad for Good happened.
So, I mean, what was the average age of that band, Brooks? Because it was pretty young.
Thomas was the youngest. I think he was 10 when I started playing with him, and I was 12. Danny, the singer, maybe 14, and then Zach, the bass player, was probably around the same age as Danny.
Wow, because that band had, I mean, we've all been in bands at a young age, but they've all generally sounded terrible.
Well, I had my share of those moments, believe me. So, I mean, I just, a couple bands prior to Bad for Good, we had to figure some things out. But yeah, by that time I was daydreaming enough at recess and school where I just knew that I wanted to play in a band with other kids that were as serious as I was with music and songwriting, and so Bad for Good was that.
Because you see the video on YouTube's there for all to see, 19, and it's just like it's polished. It's a great song. It's
very polished. Yeah.
You can't say enough. It's hard to believe how young you all are in that, because if you were listening to a record or a CD, you think, oh, in their 20s, and it still blows me away when I see it now. It's like, wow,
cool. Yeah. I mean Steve Vai was a great he was a great producer and mentor
Hmm.
for all of us. For me especially, because it was my first record, and he taught me, how to really play with a click track, how to play on the click, behind, in front of it. So, he had these drills that we would do in rehearsal, where if we weren't getting a part, he would say, cycle it. So that's where I got my, I think, OCD practice regimen from. So, which I still have residual effects that I have. But it served me well too, because I know how to break down intricate rhythms or parts because of that education with Steve, and seeing how he's wired and methods that he used. So I remember there was one part that I was having trouble with, and he put an X on my hand, and he said, go home, and every time you look at the X, think about that part. And I did for 24 hours, and it was just embedded in my brain, and the next day I was able to play it. So I think that was some voodoo Steve Vai method that he gave me, but it worked.
I can just see drummers all over the UK now when they're next in the studio drawing X.
Yeah, putting the straight edge symbol on their on the front of their hand.
Wow. And then, so from then on, I guess it would be Infectious Grooves next.
Yes.
The timeline.
Yeah. So the rehearsal hall mates that Bad for Good rehearsed at was the same place that Suicidal and Infectious rehearsed at. It's like it's one of the main halls in LA that bigger bands play at, and a lot of people rehearse there because it's kind of off the beaten track and in an industrial area. So there's not a lot of traffic going on there.
Sure.
So Robert Trujillo heard me play during his break, because we were adjacent to each other, and he luckily dug what he heard. And I think Bobby, the owner, told him that I was 14 at the time, and he didn't believe Bobby. So I came out after I finished practicing, and I was just, this scrawny kid wearing baggy clothes, and he's like, that's the dude that was just playing. And so I met him. He was, I was kind of afraid of Robert just because he has such a presence, and I was very timid. And so I don't know, I thought like he was going to kick my ass at first, but then I started talking to him, and he was, just the sweetest guy in the world. So he said, listen, we are trying to find a drummer. Will you audition? I said, yeah, I love Infectious Grooves, and I was already a fan before I met him. And at that point in Bad for Good, I was kind of over it musically and wanted to move into a different direction stylistically. Infectious was, gaining momentum, and I really loved the musicianship in that band. And plus, playing with Robert was awesome. So I auditioned. I got the gig and went out on tour without my mom for the first time. So
how did this, I guess, was school a thing of the past at this point? It was just like, I don't need it.
So with Bad for Good, Interscope hired a tutor for the band.
Sure.
And it was 4 band members, 4 parents, and a tutor traveling with us, plus crew, all on one bus. So we didn't make any money, and we had very short tours because of the overhead. But yeah, when I joined Infectious, that's when I was able to branch out. And my parents told Mike Muir, "Can you please look after my son?" Sure. This dude with the bandana, just going and protect him. Just gonna grab my water real fast.
Sure.
Okay.
So you were 14 years old when you joined Infectious Grooves. That's insane.
Yeah, I was still, I think it was my freshman year. I started high school, and so we went in, tracked a record, and I'll back up a little. I mean, so when I got the call to audition for Infectious, I was, and I think this was part of what Steve Vai taught me, was to just, really do your homework before going in for audition or learning a part. So I had 5 Infectious songs to learn, and I just obsessed daily with them and just rehashed it, and would practice the songs by myself at my parents' house. And I knew I was ready. So luckily the audition went off without a hitch, and then we did a record, Groove Family Psycho.
Yeah.
Pardon me. And I think did the drum tracks in 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Like 20 songs. So most of the takes were like, no more than 2 takes, which
really?
I had never tracked like that. So and it felt great because once you got into a flow, because I've heard Travis Barker talk about this, where he hates the downtime at the studio, and he orchestrates it where his tech makes sure that all the sounds are dialed in. He'll come in, all the songs will be lined up, and he'll just do it, track the songs back to back. And I'm a supporter of that, because if you do a track and you just go out to lunch, or lunch is brought in, and eat heavy, play heavy is what we say sometimes. So I like just being in a flow and tackling the songs back to back, if we can work that way. Because if your energy is there, you don't want it to go down a notch. So luckily we did that with Infectious, and then that led to Suicidal. I think Suicidal was broken up for a few years, and then when Mike Muir got the band back together, he asked if I would play drums with them.
Was it Jimmy DeGrasso at that point previously?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jimmy is a phenomenal drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, what's it like playing in a band with Rob? Because as bass players go, they don't generally come much better than that, I don't think.
It's so true. Yeah. I mean, Robert is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, he's in a league of his own. And I'm actually currently playing with him because we're working on a new Infectious record. So a couple of days ago, we were writing for that. And not only is he a phenomenal musician and innovative, and is always pushing the envelope, and he plays like a drummer too. I mean, he's very percussive and he slaps. He has a history of playing tablas too, which I hear in his bass playing. Beyond his musicianship and amazing skills, he's just such a positive dude. I mean, when he's like, we'll be playing together in rehearsal, and I think I played a kick pattern that he was feeling that was going well with his bass line, and he just starts screaming. He's like, yeah, that's it, and it's hard not to want to do better, after you hear someone screaming like that, and so it's just us in a room together, and he's just, I've worked with a lot of musicians, a lot of jaded musicians, but they're great musicians, but you could just tell that they're salty dogs just from being in the industry for a while. And it's just amazing to work with Robert and still see him become more energetic than the last time we played, So I mean, he's one of the good ones.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing you weren't surprised in the least when he joined Metallica then. You were just...
I mean, there was no better bass player than him. not only musically, but as a person, and, with a band like Metallica, where, obviously you have to fit in personality wise too, and be malleable there. Robert is, he doesn't have any enemies. Yeah. So, I mean, he's just a very personable guy, and he knows how to massage the situation if it's getting awkward or whatever. He would be a great president for our country.
Yeah.
So Robert Trujillo for,
because I know with Avenged, you've done some supports with Metallica. That must have been a nice gig for you. Obviously, knowing you've got a great ally there with Robert as well, and just a fun.
It was, yeah, it was great too, because it had been a while since we toured together or played a festival. So, and that was a long tour too, because they would do 3 weeks on and then 3 weeks off, but it spanned between like a 4 or 5 month period.
Yeah.
Because of the breaks. But yeah, no, it was awesome. Like on days off, we'd go out to dinner, and in New York, we had this awesome dinner with all of his friends that came out. And yeah, so it's just nice to see someone, on tour that you grew up playing with. Yeah. He's my, one of my best friends.
Oh,
so
that's amazing.
It was awesome.
And the fact that, excuse me, that you Infectious is still producing albums, it must be kind of a nice, a relief for him, almost a release, I should say. After, I know he puts 120% into the Metallica stuff, but the Infectious stuff is a totally different ball game, isn't it?
It's a whole other animal. Yeah. He's definitely not slapping in Metallica.
No,
not right now. Who knows? Maybe on the next record. But yeah, and that's why I love playing with him, because I like right now he's working on the Metallica record, and then he'll come back to Southern California and we'll work on the Infectious record. So yeah, I think it's a good outlet for him to just put on a different hat. And he loves Tower Power. He loves Jocko. He loves jazz, and that's how I was raised. But then I also love metal and punk, and he's the same way. Yeah. So I think it's a nice dichotomy of styles.
And it's the same for you as well, I guess, in many respects. Coming from Avenged back to Infectious again, it gives you kind of a different, different kind of thing going on.
When I create with Robert, it only adds more ideas for me to work with in Avenged too.
Yeah.
It's so, to pick up on new rhythms that he's bringing to the table definitely expands my musical horizons to try new ideas with Avenged. So, and maybe vice versa with him and Metallica. It's good to branch off, recharge the batteries, and because we've been with Avenged, we've been working on this record for 3 years now. So, there were definitely days where, inevitably it would feel stale, and, we would take a week off or whatever, and come back and it was good to take the time off to try, some new ideas. I think everyone needs to do that, because you can only beat a dead horse for so long.
Definitely. Look, I know time's a little bit tight, so before we go, can I just touch on Tenacious D, because I have to, because who doesn't love Tenacious D, right?
I love Tenacious D. I still love it.
That must have been a great fun gig. The songs genuinely are really good, although there's a bit of comedy in them. And Jack
a little bit.
Jack Black has a great voice. I mean, every time I hear Jack sing, I have a vision of Ronnie Dio in my mind. He's got that kind of thing going on.
He's I mean, he's such a powerhouse as an actor and as a vocalist. I mean, just as a human being. We were just, because it was Cinco de Mayo yesterday, I put on Nacho Libre for my kids who are 11. So we were as a footnote, we were celebrating Cinco de Mayo with Nacho. But yeah, he could be an opera singer or Ronnie James Dio. He's kind of a dichotomy of both styles. But I always knew he was a great singer, but when I got into the band, like, I was just blown away. Like, I never heard a bad note from him. So I mean, it was always on. I mean, the guy just has perfect pitch, and obviously with his acting background, he brings the drama into it, and yeah, I mean, he could sing for Queensryche if they called him up, and he would be fine singing for that band.
You must have had some fun playing in that band. It must have been just incredible.
Yeah, you would have to be dead not to have fun with Tenacious D. It was just a magical experience. I look back, to those years fondly, and we had some great shows in the UK specifically. I remember playing Reading and Leeds with them, right. And we opened up for Metallica too on all those shows. And ironically, Avenged was on those shows too when Jimmy the Rev was with us. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's. Did you ever hear the Tenacious D Jazz record?
I did. Yes, I did.
Where it was 15 minutes of improvisational jazz.
It's an interesting one, that's for sure, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
I think it's a holiday record for every household.
I have to say, the quality of everything in that band is superb. You can't. People say, "Oh, it's a joke. It's Spinal Tap," but it's good stuff. It's great stuff to listen to.
I mean, there's a category called comedy rock, and they're in it.
They own it.
It's I'm still friends with everyone in that band, and because of scheduling, we don't work together as much, but yeah, some of the best tours of my life have been with Tenacious D, and they're just genuinely great people. Like, to walk through an airport with Jack, and it doesn't get more recognizable than that guy.
No,
and he's so sweet and kind to everyone, whether you're an employee at Burger King or a woman in her 40s that has a daughter that wants to meet Jack Black. I mean, he's such a kind man, and Kyle too. I mean, both of those guys are just, I consider them friends for life.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. Well, look, you've had, you're having, you're a young man still,
I'll take it. I don't know if I am. I'm 44 now, but
44. Did you say?
Yeah.
I'm 47, so you're a young man. Your
These
career
Botox injections are really working, apparently.
But your career has been incredible. When you think back, from what I can tell, there's been no gaps at all. Everything's overlapped nicely, band to band. You don't seem to have burnt any bridges anywhere. Isn't that
definitely not? Yeah, the scheduling. I mean, I've definitely I've been met with some scheduling conflicts in the past, but luckily not too bad. But yeah, no, it's been a nice gradual shift into playing with different bands, and it hasn't been too bad scheduling wise.
But I mean, your career, honestly, you just look back and it's like, wow, from the age of 12 years old, 13 years old to where we are now, and the names you've played for, the songs you've played on, I tell you what, there's a lot to be proud of. You've laid down a great legacy for yourself, Brooks. You really have.
Thank you, Matty. I appreciate that. No, I definitely have moments of, pinching myself and I'm very grateful for, all the musical opportunities that I've had and still have, and just to be able to, do what I've practiced my entire life and to still have enjoyment and fulfillment and being a musician. I never take that for granted. And any young musician that asks me for advice, I just tell them, just never give up. By the end of the day, if you're still loving what you create, and even if it's not monetarily great, just don't give up, and eventually you'll find like-minded people that share the same goals and desires that you do, and eventually you'll land somewhere.
Sounds like the perfect place to end. Look, Brooks, thanks so much. I know you don't do many interviews, so I feel very privileged to have...
Only for you, Matty.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and I can't wait to see who else will be on the show.
Who knows? Great. Thank you very much.